This is the Creative Market Free Goods Roundup for the week of April 13th, 2015. As usual, there are 6 different free goods this week, but they are free this week only. So if when you're watching this video, anything looks cool to you, be sure to check out the description of this video where I'll place links to each one of these 6 different free items. So first up here is ink textures. This set includes 18 different ink textures in JPEG format, so I have 5 of them selected at random here, opened up inside Photoshop to show them. And if I go to image and then image size, on this particular one it's 3500 by 3500 pixels, right around there. The sizes throughout these do change, but that's a pretty good example of the kind of scale you'll find with these, so the overall scale on most of these is pretty big. I'll zoom in here a little bit closer so you can get a better look at this, and I'll just keep on zooming in here so you can see what these look like really up close. There's quite a bit of detail throughout these ink textures. As you can see, right now I'm at 100% and everything still looks nice and sharp, and they have kind of a neat dithering texture going on inside of them, so perhaps these were processed in that way, but I think it gives it a pretty unique and interesting look when you're actually zoomed in really close. So here's the second one right here. I'll just zoom in a little bit closer so you can get a better look at this one. So there is a nice little bit of versatility in the overall layouts throughout all these textures. They do have a lot of different shapes and forms that you can kind of use and apply to your work and kind of figure out which ones will work the best. So on this one right here, I actually went ahead and took this texture, I'll just zoom in a little bit closer, and applied it to my logo as an example use. So I'll just turn off this background texture here and then pop on my logo. So this is what the texture looks like when it's actually applied to an object. It gives it a really cool worn feeling. I actually quite like how this looks. And then if you add, for example, a solid color behind it, that's another way you can kind of set this apart. And you could also, I'm just going to duplicate this layer mask right here, and then I'm going to move it around a little bit just so you can kind of see how you can layer these textures on top of each other to create a really interesting set of looks using even the same texture right here. So this is the same texture, but this one's rotated 180 degrees with this sort of orangish brown color behind it. It has a really cool effect when I layer these, so I'd really recommend when you want to apply these two objects, consider layering multiple textures over each other to add a whole bunch of depth and different color interactions. You'll get some really cool looks that way. So I'm just going to quickly go through the last 2 here. This one has a pretty interesting shape to it. I'll zoom in a little bit closer here so you can get a better idea. And throughout all these textures, they do a really nice job of including not only these really dark spots, but also the subtle light gradations throughout the outsides of the dark spots. I think it gives these a pretty neat look to them once they're actually applied to objects. And here's the last one I selected, mainly because there's a little bit of weird stuff going on in the colors in the background here. Maybe this was intentional, maybe not, I don't really know. But one way you can kind of clean this up if you want to is just hit Control U on a PC or Command U on a Mac, and then take the saturation down to 0, which will make this all grayscale. And if you want to change the balance of the lights and the darks, you could do that with either curves or levels. I love using levels, which is Control L on a PC or Command L on a Mac. And then take this top little bar and bring it in a little bit, which will kind of help this background become more of a pure white. And this middle bar right here kind of determines the overall light and dark balance. So you can get a lot of extra versatility with these once you get comfortable kind of adjusting the levels or curves with these, depending on what you want to do or how you prefer to work. That's just one way to do it. And for reference, this bottom bar is just the deepest dark, so you can move that inward to the right here to really bring out those darks a little bit more. But a really cool pack of 18 different ink textures with quite a bit of different looks inside here, so you should get quite a bit of use out of these. And like I said before, try layering different textures on top of each other to add even more looks. I think this is a really cool way to work. So if you like what you've seen so far and you want to try it out yourself, be sure to pick this pack up this week. Next up is 100 hand-drawn arrows. These arrows come in a bunch of different file formats, including AI, EPS, PNG, and JPEG. The JPEGs look almost identical to this Illustrator file right here with the background included, so I don't think they'll be quite as useful as the PNGs with the transparent background, but the option is there for you to use if you want to use them. So with the Illustrator files shown right here, there are 2 different pages. Here's the first page and this is the second page. So you can tell there's a lot of different arrows to pick from here with a lot of different styles, but they all have a pretty consistent hand-drawn look. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit closer and kind of scroll through a few of the different arrow options here so you can kind of get a better idea of what to expect. Looking at this arrow right here, for example, it has a really scribbly, very quickly colored in look to it, so that's kind of a consistent look throughout this entire set. That is just a very fun, very handmade, very quickly drawn aesthetic throughout. It reminds me of something that you might find doodled on a kid's book in school or something like that. Just that really fast and fun sort of style. So here's the second page. Once again, a bunch of different arrow styles here to choose from. And there's also some different things that you might not come to expect from a typical arrow, such as these bow and arrow arrows right here, as well as some kind of more unique stuff like this arrow that has this really squiggly line going down it, or generally kind of just messy drawn arrows like this one right here. So if you're looking for a pack of arrows that has a really handmade, a very quickly almost scribble drawn style to it, this is a really good pack to pick up for that exact reason. Any sort of project that you want to give a youthful hand-drawn vibe to, these might come in pretty handy. So if you like what you see right here, be sure to pick this pack up this week while it's still free. Next we have Lawson typeface. This font is provided in an open type font format, and I have it opened up inside Adobe Illustrator here to show it. And as you can see, it's a headline font. It's very bold and it has a very unique look to it. So if you're looking for something to place on a poster or something similar that has a pretty bold and impactful appearance to it, this is a pretty interesting font to pick. So up at the top here, these are the lowercase letters, and then just below it are the uppercase letters. As you can tell, the forms are almost identical throughout, except the uppercase letters are just a little bit taller. If I just drag this lowercase version over the uppercase version right here, so you can kind of see how the outlines overlap, you can see how that actually works in practice. For the most part, it just seems like the letters themselves have been stretched out a little bit to give them a little bit more height, but the width has maintained its same consistent style throughout. I'll just remove this extra thing right here and go down. So it includes all the numbers as well as a handful of different special characters. If I highlight over this and then go to type and then glyphs near the top here, you can tell what it includes as far as special characters go. It's a pretty limited amount of different special characters, but it does include most of the expected punctuation marks and stuff like that. And also, as you can see, it does include these little word marks like the words and, the, to, and of. And I think these look really good, and I think this is a nice little bonus include on this particular font. So I went ahead and typed up Free Goods Roundup right here so you can see how it looks when it's actually typed out into a sentence. The kerning is spot on almost everything except this F. I might try to bring this R in a little bit closer, so keep an eye out for words with an overhang like this. That might throw off the stock kerning a little bit, but I think this is a pretty unique thing as far as the F goes, because as you can see on this G, it works just fine. And also something to note here, the stock spacing is really small. So if I make one space right here, you can tell the space is pretty tightly put in there, but you could just double space words if you wanted to give it a little bit more space quite easily. But I actually quite like this font for use as a display font. It's nice and bold and it has a pretty unique character to it. If I zoom in a little bit closer on these letters, you can kind of get a better idea of the style. Most of the upper parts of the letters have these little circular cuts in them, and then the bottom ones have these little spikes on them. But that's it for this font. It's pretty straightforward, a nice bold headline font in open type font format. So if you think you might have use for this one in a project either now or in the future, be sure to pick this one up this week while it's still free. Next up is Silver Mix Glitter Textures. This is a set of 5 different glitter textures in JPEG format, and if I go to image and then image size up the top here, these are 2400 by 2400 pixels, so they should be plenty big for most print or digital applications. And although these are not repeating patterns, they do actually do a pretty good job of repeating if you have to do so. So I'm just going to hit Control J on a PC or Command J on a Mac to duplicate this layer, and then slide it over here so you can see how these look. So as you can tell, there is a seam line going down this when I apply them this way, but it's actually not very noticeable at all. I think because this pattern is so busy, because there's so much going on, it does a really good job of hiding the fact that there is a seam line. So if you have to go in and repeat these to make these even larger, I think you'll be able to do that just fine without having to worry all that much about these seam lines. So here's the second one right here, which is another glitter pattern. And if you at any time want to add some color to these, it's actually really easy to do. Just hit Control U on a PC or Command U on a Mac. Make sure Preview is checked so you can actually see what's going on, and then hit the Colorize button. And then you can just adjust the hue. And as you can tell, as I adjust the hue, it does actually a very nice job of adding some additional color to this glitter texture. So you can make these be whatever color you want. It's super easy to do so. And if you want to change it up even more, you can kick up the brightness a little bit, add a little bit more saturation, and you get a whole new look of glitter texture going on. So these are very customizable in that aspect. So I'm just going to quickly go over the last two right here. This one's a little bit darker, which makes the white spots much more apparent. So if you're looking for a very bold look of glitter, this is kind of a cool one to check out. And on this one right here, relatively similar to the last one, it's still very dark, but if you hit Control U on this or Command U on a Mac, colorize this, add a little bit of lightness, and then kind of change that hue around, it looks like a whole new texture. So be sure to go in there and do that if you really like these and you want to add some even more customization to them. And on this last one here, this is actually a very nice and bright texture. I went ahead and applied it to my logo so you can see how that looks. I think it does a really nice job of conveying the idea of glitter very quickly. I think you should be able to apply these glitter textures to any sort of simple silhouettes or type very quickly and easily. Doing this for myself only took a few seconds, so it was very quick for me to do that, and it added a pretty cool look to my logo right here. So for example, if you have some type that you want to sparkle up or some simple silhouettes or illustrations, I think these textures would do a very nice job of bringing a little bit of sparkle to them. So that's it for the 5 different glitter textures included here, and do remember you can customize the color of these if you do like these and you want to add even more use to them. But if you liked what you saw in this video, be sure to pick it up this week while it's still free. Next up is 66 hand sketched elements for design. The included file formats for these are EPS as well as transparent background PNGs. So I have the EPS files opened up inside Illustrator here, and there's 3 different EPS files, one which is the seamless repeating pattern, and if I zoom out just a little bit here, you can tell that I have repeated this pattern and that it does do a nice job of repeating. I don't see any problems with it. If you do notice some hairline kind of white line fractures throughout this, it's just an Illustrator rendering bug. It's not an actual issue with the pattern itself. For example, when I'm zoomed in this close, you can't see it at all. That's just a common problem with inside Illustrator. And here's one of the pages. So inside this set, there are 66 different hand-drawn elements. On this little center element here, it says includes JPEGs, although I didn't see any in my downloads, so maybe I just missed them somehow. But it does include the PNGs and EPS files. So there are 2 different pages here. There's this one as well as this one. And all these are also included in the PNG formats. These are just the EPS versions, which I prefer personally working with. And these have a really nice simplistic style to them, and all the styles of these different elements throughout are very consistent. So if I zoom in a little bit closer here and take a look at these different feathers and plant elements, you can tell that they look like they're very consistent and drawn by the same person. So you should be able to mix and match all these different elements together to create custom arrangements that should look very nice together. And if I zoom back out, we can take a better look at some of the other floral elements that are included here. There's a pretty nice and diverse selection of different leaf-shaped items to pick from, so be sure to go in here and kind of use which ones you think will work best. There's also stuff like this banner right here, as well as some different scroll works that you can use to add to your designs as you see fit. I think if you use a hand-drawn style font or you hand-draw your own type using this set, I think that'll give whatever you're working on a very nice look. So here's the second page of elements. Once again, there's a lot of different floral elements as well as some floral wreaths. Up here at the top, there's a few different floral elements in the shape of a heart almost on this one. And then we have some different stuff here as well. Right here are a couple different arrows as well as a deer drawing, which I'm just going to merge together here to get rid of some of those weird lines, as well as some antlers and a crescent moon. So all in all, this pack is pretty nice. It gives you a pretty diverse selection of different stuff to pick from here between this page right here as well as this second page right here. And do remember it also includes this pattern, which I did not see included in the PNG formats, but it is included inside the EPS format. So you should be able to size this as big or as small as you need to kind of fit whatever sort of project you want to apply this to. So a cool pack, but do remember it's free this week only, so if you like what you see, be sure to pick it up. And last up is Old Movie Titles, which is a Photoshop layer style set. This is a set of 6 different really cool Photoshop layer style effects, and they're actually very easy to go in and modify. And I'll just check out the size really quick before I dive in. If I go to image size, this one is 2000 by 1500 pixels, which makes this a perfect size for anything on the web. But to change these, it's actually really easy to do. So right here, there's a layer, it's highlighted in yellow, that says your text inside here. Just double click on that smart object, which will bring you up to this new window where you can either replace the existing type, or in this case, I just put my own stuff in here. So I'm just going to save this smart object window with my new type inside, and then close this once it's done rendering all this stuff in here. And when you're brought back into the window here, you can tell that it automatically applied this really cool effect. There's some overlaid type on here I'm just going to turn off so it doesn't get in the way. But here's the end result. It's a really cool look with a lot of different texture and effect to it. So I am at 100% right now, so you can tell it does a very nice job of making a 3D extrude right here. There's a lot of texture going on too on the sides of these. I'm not totally sure how they did this, but it looks really good. As you can tell, the inner parts right here are much darker with some nice directional light effects on the side here. So they did a really good job of not only making the text look cool, but also providing a pretty cool background right here. If I turn that off, you can see what it looks like without it. So the background really does add quite a bit to these different looks. So I'm just going to go through the other 5 examples. There are 6 in total here, just so you can get an idea of what to expect, but the use of all these should be relatively the same throughout them. So here's another one with a very cool drop shadow going behind this type here, and inside the type itself there's a really nice linear texture, and I think they also did a nice job of adding just a strip of color to this. Most of these looks are very vintage in their appearance, like 1920s through 1940s movies, when everything was still in black and white. But with this example right here, you can go in and add color as you see fit. Just because a lot of these are in black and white doesn't mean you have to only use them in black and white. So here's the next one right here. This background texture is super cool. If I zoom in a little bit closer, I'm at 200% right here, so it looks a little bit faded out. But there's a lot of really nice subtle texture differences in the background here that I really enjoy looking at. It's just an overall really cool texture with a lot of stuff going on that makes this a pretty special and unique set as a whole. So here's the 5th one. I actually really like this font choice right here. If I go into the smart object, you can tell that this font is live. So if I highlight over strawberry, for example. I don't have this font installed right now, but it's called Harrington, so be sure to download these fonts if you want to use these pre-made layouts just as you see them. But a great font choice, as well as the flowers in the background really kind of fit this vibe pretty well, so this is a super cool layout in my opinion. And here's the last one of the bunch. It's typical the end slide. A really nice background pattern going on here with some lightly embossed type with a drop shadow. So overall, I think this pack is super cool. They did a really nice job of taking their time and creating a nice and diverse selection of different looks to create on your own here. And like I showed in this first one right here, it's really easy to go in there and add your own custom stuff. It takes just a few seconds to plop your stuff in there, save it, close it, and then all the hard work is done inside the file itself of actually making the type 3D extrude or add drop shadows and textures. All that stuff is done for you. So if you thought these were as cool as I did, be sure to pick this pack up this week while it's still free. So that's it for this week's free goods, and do remember they are free this week only. So if you saw anything you liked, be sure to check out the description of this video where you'll find a link to download it for free. And as always, if you found this video helpful, please like and favorite. And if you want to see this video every week, please subscribe. This video is released every Monday to let you know it's free this week on Creative Market. Thank you for watching.